Larry King, the hell with you. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews. Charlie Rose, what are you, like 83? The hell with you. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews. Piers Morgan, you, sir, are a moron. This is TWI, Troy Wilde Interviews.
Thank you so much for joining us right here, episode 18 of Troy Wilde Interviews, the broadcast quality podcast dedicated to interviewing comics all over the United States and internationally. You can listen to us on iTunes, now called Apple Podcasts. Thank you, Steve Jobs, for being a prick, but also a genius and inventing podcasts, or I wouldn't be able to do this out of my house. You can also listen on Stitcher Radio, of course, our website, and Google Play Music. Google Play Music, man, it's like Google just got to the iTunes thing late. Google Play is Google's iTunes. Google also, it's kind of like that, what's that Google search engine or that Google Plus? It's kind of like that. It was like about 8 years too late, man. But we're on Google Play, and man, I love Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They invented Google. Great guys. So listen to us in any of those places and all of those places. And the best thing you can do for me, if you want to, not out of pity, because you think it's worth sharing, share us. Share us, tell your friends, and comment on iTunes or our website. For some reason, that helps. Even if like 100 people say, you suck, or you rock, whatever it is, for some reason, that helps us. By the way, today on the podcast, former United States Marine Erik Knowles, and a comedian for the last 15 years. Yeah, this guy is a former Marine and a comedian. He got his big break by getting busted down in the Marine Corps. They forced him to do some type of stand-up thing, and he found out he liked it. Erik, you know you're talking with a funny guy when, you know, a few minutes into the interview, he says, I was busted down in the Marine Corps from like 3 ranks down to private or whatever. And I said, how do you get busted down in the Marine Corps? He said, well, I drank too much. And they sent him to rehab. If you're a freaking United States Marine and you get sent to rehab, yeah, that's like you got a problem, man. That is, and I say that with total love. I mean, this guy is super funny. And Erik has won the World Series of Comedy. He's won all kinds of stuff in San Diego. He's joining us from Fort Walton Beach. He's helping the wounded warriors down there doing something called Combat to Comedy. And it's to bring down this insane suicide rate among veterans. This program's trying to, kind of like with the animal companions, trying to get these folks some help, man. There is a generation in crisis. And all we can talk about is Donald Trump and Kardashians. You know what I'm saying? And who had a sex change operation. Yeah, that's all we can talk about. Erik, though, thank God for him, people like him, helping wounded warriors, all kinds of military stuff, helping the veterans. He'll tell you all about it in the interview straight ahead. And Erik is having a banner year. He says he quit drinking a couple years ago. And the one thing I meant to say to him in the interview, he says, I haven't really talked about that, though, because I don't really talk about it on stage. And I wanted to say, yeah, Erik, because no one in comedy has ever had a drinking problem. I quit when I was about 30, drinking. I quit smoking, then I quit drinking, and then I quit codependent relationships with women. Then I went back to codependent relationships with women. Then I quit codependent relationships with women and back to codependent because the thing is, you can quit drinking and smoking, but man, you cannot quit your nature, which is women. But I've learned to keep those codependent relationships down to about 2 months. 2 months. And they get on my nerves. I get on to the next one. So I think I've replaced smoking and drinking with women. I'm good with that. That's fine. That's fine with me. I'm all right with that. So Erik joins us, and he is touring all over the United States. He's working on a comedy special. He's working on a sitcom. He has an album coming out. He's performing all over the place. For example, in August, there's a place, I think it's called LA Comedy. LA Comedy House. It's up there in the stratosphere in Las Vegas. He's doing a full week there. So Erik is from Texas, joined the Marine Corps, served in San Diego, MCAS, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. That's where the Top Gun flight school is. Tom Cruise and all that business, Top Gun. That's Miramar. That's San Diego. That's why Tom Cruise is, when he sings that song, Lost That Love and Feeling, to Kelly McGillis. I've been to that bar. That bar where he sings that, he karaoke's that song to Kelly McGillis, and they say the cheesy love song scene from Top Gun was filmed here. I remember eating ribs there probably 3 or 4 times. I also lived about 2 hours east of San Diego in Arizona is Yuma. And a big part of the reason that Yuma, Arizona exists is because of the United States Army's Yuma Proving Ground and MCAS Yuma, Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, which is very much a sister facility to Miramar. It's kind of, they're on the same flight path. Arizona, like 80% of the land in Arizona is for military. Luke Air Force Base, Davis-Monthan, MCAS, Yuma. Yeah, you don't want to fuck with Arizona. Believe me. Like, if that little Kim Jong guy does something, if he comes over here to Arizona, he's fucked. I mean, you do not want to play with Arizona or Southern California because the military assets here will blow your freaking mind. So I didn't serve. Well, if you live in Yuma for 8 years, that is sort of a form of service. I moved to Arizona in 98, worked in radio, did a morning show over there, primarily as a journalist, and I got to know a ton of Marines. MCAS Yuma. I worked regularly, doing news stories out of the base. It is a major employer over there, like 10 or 15,000 Marines. Some of the best people I have ever met, United States Marines. It is just such a good feeling. You meet a guy and he's, 21. He looks you in the eye like a guy 40, shakes your hand, and the maturity of these guys would freak me out, man, and their confidence. Coolest people. Here was the downside. When you live in Yuma, there's no 4-year college there. There's like 100,000 people year-round. With the snowbirds, it goes to a couple 100,000, maybe 300,000 in the winter. That's cool if you want to bang a snowbird. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Like, I was like in my late 20s, I didn't want to bang a snowbird. So what I'm trying to tell you is there were no women there because the young ones, they go off to school, like college, to a 4-year school in Phoenix or Tucson or San Diego or Flagstaff, and they don't come back. So there are not many single women there, right? Like the ones you want to date. And that is really, really impacted by the fact that you have 15,000 very well-conditioned, handsome young guys and gals serving in the Marine Corps. So the 3 hot women in Yuma have 15,000 Marines to pick from. So those were 8 very lean years. So United States Marines, that's why I have a problem with you. But, I got over it. I moved to Phoenix. We got like 2 million women up here, and I'm doing better now. But still, I have some residual issues with the Marine Corps for taking all the women when I lived down there. So Erik is here, and we are very, very glad to have Erik Knowles right here on episode 18 of Troy Wilde Interviews.
Hey, Troy, it's Erik.
Hey, Erik. How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
Excellent. We are recording. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I've just been running a little bit. I'm out here at Fort Walton Beach, Florida, doing an event at Eglin Air Force Base for some wounded warriors. Been out here all week. It's been busy. How you been?
Doing very well, and thank you for doing this interview. Tell us what you're doing for the wounded warriors down in Fort Walton Beach.
Oh, man, I would love to. This has just been amazing. I'm doing a program that my partner, Will C., and I came up with. It's called Combat to Comedy. So we're just trying to teach these wounded warriors to use comedy to be able to tell some of the stories that they haven't been able to tell otherwise, just to kind of get the cat out of the bag and get the demon out of the bottle. And it's just been amazing. It's just been an emotionally draining week. We've laughed, we've cried. It's just been really, really inspiring.
If you can, tell us a little bit about the guys you're working with, sort of the scale of their injuries.
It is just some heavy stuff. I mean, a lot of these guys were blown up in Afghanistan. One guy was blown up in Afghanistan. He came back home. He's had a stroke. He has 2 kids, one of which has Down syndrome. Both of his kids have cancer now. I mean, it's just tragedy on top of tragedy on top of tragedy. And these guys, I mean, enough to make anybody want to quit. And these guys are just soldiers. They're just willing to keep fighting and to keep trying to find their new normal and not become a statistic and not become part of that 22 a day, which is that's how many active duty and veterans commit suicide every day, 22 a day. And I heard that statistic a few years ago, and I just jumped onto my feet. I mean, it's just, I didn't believe it. I had to look it up and do my own research, and I said, there's no way that this is going on, and it's not the top headline in the news every day. It's a travesty that it's not. So I'm just trying to do what I can to get that number down to something less shocking. You know what I mean?
And comedy seems like a pretty good avenue because laughter is, like they say, the best medicine or a great form of therapy, huh?
Really is. I've been saying that for years, and this is an opportunity to put my money where my mouth is and really put it to the test and try it. I mean, comedy is, laughter is the best medicine, looks good on paper, so I wanted to put it into action and see if it really works. And it is. It's just amazing, man. I mean, I've been prompted and inspired to look into myself, and I'm finding out things about myself and dealing with them just because I'm listening to these guys talk about the things that they've been through. Comedy's always been my defense mechanism, my security net, really. And it's what's got me through a lot of personal tragedies in my life without me even realizing it. And just the last couple of years, I've been doing this for going on 2 years now with the Wounded Warriors. And it's just been amazing. It really has. I love doing stand-up comedy and performing in the clubs and, that high that you get when you're performing on stage and just making everybody laugh and making everybody feel good. I thought that was the top of the world. And I thought, that alone would be enough to make me want to do stand-up for the rest of my life. But now I'm realizing that I can use it to help actually heal people who really need it and who really deserve it. People who have sacrificed literally everything to serve our country and to, to provide all of the freedoms that we take for granted. And I'm not a big conservative flag-waving kind of guy. I've got my own conspiracy theories about a lot of things, but all that aside, these guys and girls are really doing what they believe in and doing it for altruistic reasons. And I can't just turn my back on them, whether or not I believe in the wars that we're fighting or whatever. These are real lives and real families that are out here. So this is my way of trying to give back, because I'm a veteran. I was in the Marines, and I didn't take it seriously the whole time I was in. I got in a lot of trouble. I wasn't the proudest hoorah Marine, but I've learned from these guys to have some pride in what I did and to really be not belittle my service.
And comedy to combat. I think that's what you called the program. Can you talk about the sort of one-on-one experience, what you're doing exactly?
Well, I'm really not doing much, really. All we're doing is just telling these guys and these girls that comedy can heal them. And we tell them that they can talk about the things that they've never talked about. And we open up our show or our program by making ourselves vulnerable and kind of telling them about some of our shameful things that we've been through, and really opening up and letting them see us get weak, and that kind of prompts them and inspires them. And then we just say, let's go around the room and just tell me a little bit about yourself. And they just spill the beans, they're all just looking for that opportunity to say it. And they can't say it to everybody. Their wives and their husbands don't really understand. But we create an environment, we close the doors, and we say, we're all veterans here. We all have a really sick sense of humor. Not everything is funny, but if it's funny to you, it can heal you, you know. And we just open up the floor to them, and they just pour it out. And we do a lot more crying than we do laughing.
Maybe you got to cry before you can laugh, though, huh?
Absolutely. There is no comedy without tragedy. And tragedy begets comedy.
And they trust you because you're a former Marine. They know that you've done what they've done to some extent, and you go in there as a comic, but also as a former Marine. They trust you. They open up. Like you said, they may not be opening up to other people, which ultimately will maybe help their overall mental health. And like you said, get that suicide number down from 22 a day or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 22 a day is a number that may not even be accurately high enough. You know, I mean, and that's just military numbers. On the civilian side, you know, suicide is really an epidemic even among the civilian ranks. But I don't know what the numbers are on that, but I assume it's even more.
So you've done comedy for a number of years, and you were a United States Marine. A little bit of backstory, to my understanding, were you born and raised in Texas?
I was, that's right. Born and raised in Southeast Texas. And I joined the Marine Corps in 1998, came out to San Diego for boot camp. I ended up being stationed in San Diego for 5.5 years after stop loss, and I was in San Diego the whole time except for being deployed. I went overseas on a Navy ship in support of Enduring Freedom, and then I was on the ground in Iraq for Iraqi freedom. And then they lifted stop loss, and I got out in 2003. And I started doing stand-up. I actually started doing stand-up just before I got out in the Marines. The first time I did it, I was ordered to do it as a punishment because I'd already been busted down to private, and they couldn't bust me down anymore. So my sergeant got creative, and he signed me up for the Squadron Christmas Party talent show as a stand-up comedian, and I just roasted my whole chain of command, and luckily they had a good sense of humor about it.
So did you always have a comic inside of you? Was it something you wanted to do your whole life and then you went in the Marine Corps? Because basically, if you're that quiet, closeted comic, you can go and do anything else, and you just haven't let the comic out yet.
That's pretty much it. You know, I've always been a comedian. I didn't know what it was. You know, one of my earliest memories of being a kid is an older lady just wagging her finger in my face and saying, "You're just a little comedian, aren't you?" She was so mad at me. Every time somebody was mad at me, they'd say I was being a comedian. And I thought it meant, you know, that I was just being a jerk or an a-hole or something. And then, you know, as I got a little older, I realized what a comedian was and that you could make a living at it, and it just seemed absurd to me. I've always been a fan of stand-up as a kid and just comedy in general. But it wasn't until I was in the Marines and I did that talent show that I really thought that I could do it. And as soon as I did, I just realized, okay, well, this is what I'm going to be good at, because I wasn't a very good Marine. I got in a lot of trouble. I got busted down 3 times. I barely made it out.
Okay, now that's the second time you brought that up. You got to tell me what you did to get busted down. What do you do to get busted down as a Marine?
Well, I drank too much, which you would think the Marines would be the place to be if you like to drink. But
okay, if you're a Marine that drinks too much among Marines, you really did drink too much, didn't you?
Yeah, they sent me to rehab. If the Marine Corps sends you to rehab, you probably got
shit, man, yeah. When the frickin' hoorah sends you to rehab, 12 steps, you got something going on there.
Yeah, the Marine Corps was founded in a pub. Yeah.
And I don't mean to poke fun at this. So you're like AA? You're recovering?
Well, I'm not AA. I don't have anything against that. That works for a lot of people. It worked for my dad. But I'm about 1.5 years sober right now, just by the grace of God. I don't know. He just took it away from me one morning. I woke up and the monkey was just not there on my back anymore. But it's been 1.5 years. I'm just trying to keep the streak going as long as I can. You know, the addictive quality and personality, I think, is still in me, but I'm keeping it at bay. You know, it's almost like superstition at this point. It's just not broken, so I'm not fixing it. Ever since I stopped drinking, good things have started happening to me. in my life. It's like a football player who doesn't want to change his socks because he's not losing any games, you know?
And, you know, and I think I can laugh at this because I had a similar experience in my early 30s. What you just said, one day I woke up and I don't know, I got past it for some reason. And then things got better. Maybe because I was more alert or in the moment or something like that. And you're in the Marine Corps, they send you to rehab, and then you leave the Marine Corps, but you start doing stand-up in the Marine Corps. I've looked at your Facebook page, and it sounds like you stayed in San Diego. You won the World Series of Comedy, the Veterans of Comedy. So you did really well. You were making a living, and I'm assuming you still are doing stand-up. Is that right?
That's right. I'm paying all my bills. Maybe not all at the same time, but I get them all paid. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, I am living the dream. You know, the last couple of years, this last year has just been amazing. This is my year where everything's really starting to happen for me. Like you said, I won the 2016 World Series of Comedy. I won first place in that, which has given me a lot of work. I've been able to tour this year. I'm all over the United States. I just recorded my first album with Uproar Comedy Records, the same label that Richard Pryor was on. And that's going to be dropping any day now on iTunes and XM Sirius. It's going to be everywhere. I'm filming my 1-hour special on June 10th in Los Angeles at the Bob Hope Patriotic Hall. And that event will be free to all military and veterans. And that is really just to help promote my sitcom that I'm working on with Sony right now, which would be based on my life and based on the stand-up comedy of Erik Knowles.
Wow.
High and tight.
So you're doing a live special, you have an album dropping, and you're working on a sitcom with Sony. Well, it sounds like this is one hell of a year for you.
It really, really is. It really is. And I just had a baby 8 weeks ago.
Oh, little boy?
Baby girl.
Oh, congratulations.
Baby girl. Yep.
How many kids do you have?
This makes 5.
Wow, that is a big family. You're doing your own little Marine Corps there.
Yeah. Did you hear that little pause of silence? It's like there's no gesundheit for that. Nobody ever says congratulations when you tell them you have 5 kids.
You're like, it's more like, hey,
yeah, you're making bad decisions, man.
It's more like consolation and sympathy or something. Huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, sir. Wow, 5.
5. Well, that is, and what is the age range of your children?
Well, from Abigail's 8 weeks all the way up to the 15-year-old stepson. You know, in my act, I say I have 5 kids, and 3 of them are stepkids, which means that I have 2 kids that I love and 3 other kids that I also love as well. It's just different. You know, it's a little different.
You know, man.
Maybe I love them more. You know, I didn't even make them.
It is, unless you've been through it, it's hard to explain. I have a little boy, a 5-year-old. I'm divorced from his mother, but he has older siblings from her first marriage, and I always referred to him as those other kids. But I love them just like him. They're the most adorable because they're his. I think it's different than if you marry somebody or you with somebody who has other kids from other people. It's like you can love those kids, but when you have a child with a woman who has children from another father, those children, they're not so much your stepkids. They become the half siblings to the kids you have with that woman. That may be a complex. At least that's how it worked out for me. Is that sort of your deal?
Well, sort of. I mean, it's 50-50 custody. They have a dad who's a pretty good guy, you know, so there's not like a huge void for me to fill. So it's just a lot of fun, you know. It really is a lot of fun. People don't realize when you choose to be with a woman who has children already, you're choosing those children. You're not just choosing the woman, you're choosing the children that come with them, you know, which is a really big commitment. It's a really big bite to take out of that sandwich.
Yeah, amen to that. And sometimes it's the biggest blessing, but when it doesn't work, I think it's really bad. When it does work, it can be really good. It can be the ideal family because it's more love.
Yep, I
Something
agree.
like that. Now, back to your comedy. To win the World Series of Comedy, I mean, what your material, is it just everything? Is it military? Do you talk about getting busted down in the Marine Corps? I mean, that in itself, you just say, like, you know, the Marine Corps sent me to rehab. That just, I mean, that, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. What is the...
I haven't even really admitted that on stage, about rehab and the drinking and everything. I kind of, just for comedy's sake and for the sake of time, I just kind of gloss over it, and say I got in a lot of trouble because I was a big joker, which is a lot of it too. I mean, it's not completely untrue, but there's a big chunk of my material about being in the Marines and getting in trouble and using my sense of humor, how my sense of humor got me into trouble and how it got me out of some trouble a lot of times. And then a big chunk of material about being a stepdad, and a big chunk of material about using medicinal marijuana as a parent, and using that to help me get off of alcohol and off of the antidepressants and off of everything else, And I never was a big pothead. In high school, I used to tell on people, for it. I was a straight-laced guy. I pretty much always have been. But I moved to San Diego, and it was kind of hard to avoid it, and I ended up trying it, and medicinally, recreationally at first, but then I noticed the medicinal value in it. And, I'm not a big preacher for it. I know that it's not for everybody, but it's working for me right now, and it has worked for me the last few years. And that's what the sitcom will be about. It has the play on words. The title is High and Tight, which is the Marine Corps haircut. So it has high in the title also. So it'll be a mainstream sitcom about a regular guy raising kids, falling in love with a woman, and raising kids who aren't his, and who's using medicinal marijuana to kind of smooth the transition from soldier to civilian.
I understand completely. And you said earlier you're touring all over the country. Did I find a date for you at the Stratosphere later this summer? LA Comedy
That's
Club?
Right. Yep, I'll be there for my birthday week, August 10th through, or whatever it is. My birthday's August 16th, so I'll be there that week at the Stratosphere in Las Vegas all week from Monday to Sunday.
So you're traveling on the road quite a bit?
Quite a bit, yep, quite a bit. My next big trip is to Chattanooga, to the Comedy Catch, and I'm going to bring my wife and a couple of my kids and make a vacation out of it. We just got back from, I'm still not back. I came straight from Colorado out here to Florida. My wife came with me to Colorado, and she flew back to Texas where we live. But we were in Colorado for the 420 events and doing some shows out there and doing some shows for a group called Grow for Vets, which helps get medicinal marijuana to veterans who need it. And now I'm out here working with the Wounded Warriors, and I'm ready to head home tomorrow morning at 03:30 to spend a couple of weeks with my family, and then I'll be back on the road to Wichita, to the Looney Bin in Wichita, Kansas.
Can you give us some insight? How do you go from, San Diego, then to Texas? I guess I'm curious, how do the clubs get to know you? Do the bookers all know each other and there becomes sort of this sort of knowledge base, or are you out there hustling your stuff and calling the clubs and saying, I just did a week at the Strat in Vegas, you should give me a shot? How does this work?
I wish it was like that, where they knew everybody, but unfortunately it's not. It is a lot of hustling, and I kind of have to prove myself to each new club. And recommendations and my reputation takes me a certain distance, but not all the way. A lot of times I'll have to come in as a feature before they'll bring me in to headline. But I'm starting to see less and less of that. It seems like word is spreading. Without a big TV credit, it's really hard to convince somebody who's never heard of you that they should pay you a couple $1,000s to come headline their club for the weekend. And I don't blame them, I guess. But
when you headline, you have an opener, a feature, you're headlining, couple shows Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, about an hour of material, 45 minutes?
Right. Usually 45 minutes to an hour.
Do you have your routine worked out, or are you doing crowd work? What is your thing mostly?
Well, my act is more close to a one-man show. It's really just my story. I just tell my story. So it's not really something that I have to memorize, because I don't have to memorize the truth. When I started just being autobiographical on stage, it got a lot easier for me, because I didn't have to memorize the jokes and the steps and the beats of it. I've been doing stand-up for 12 years now, so I've found my voice, so the rhythm comes naturally. and all of the nuts and bolts and the setup, punch, tag, all of that is kind of built into me now. So it's almost like I trust my voice and I trust myself to just be able to say anything, and it'll come out funny. You know, it may not be perfect the first time I try it, but it'll come out funny.
You said setup, punch, tag. What is tag?
Well, you know, a comic will do the setup to a joke. You know, he might lead you in one direction and then use misdirection to hit you with an unexpected punchline, and then the audience laughs, and he'll say one more thing, and you'll laugh again, and sometimes he'll tag it again. That's called tagging your punchline, to just keep that laugh going. Like, I tell a story about being in boot camp, and we're all lined up in the morning in our underwear, and I've got a boner in the morning from just being in trouble, you know, just from being asleep. And, you know, and so everybody has to do push-ups. I have to stand there with my boner while everybody's doing push-ups, you know, and everybody's going to keep doing push-ups until Knowles' boner goes away. And everybody laughs. You know, he comes over to take a close look at it and says, "Oh, he's still turned on over here." And everybody laughs. You know, that's a tag. And I tag it again by saying, "Well, back up, you know, quit breathing on it, maybe." And they laugh. Tag it again. You know, you spit when you talk. You're making it worse on both of us. Yeah. That's tagging a joke.
I'm kind of getting a sense of you just attracted it. I'm not thinking you stood there when you were in the Marine Corps as a smartass. I'm thinking it just kind of came to you somehow, huh? Just by virtue of who you were or are, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm sensing that.
I can't. I just always had trouble blending in. A lot of people in the Marines are like, just blend in, just don't stand out. And I couldn't do it to save my life. I was sticking out like a sore thumb. They knew, they could see something in me that I wasn't supposed to be there, is what it felt like. And I couldn't help but agree with them.
And what is the best thing, as you look back now at the Marine Corps, what is the best thing that came of it?
The best thing that came of it is probably the friendship, the camaraderie, you know, the lifelong friendships that I've made. And I'm part of a family now. You know, for a lot of years after I got out, I kind of didn't look back. You know, I just said, "Oh, so glad that's over. I'm glad to be a civilian now." But working with the Wounded Warriors and being a part of the Veterans of Comedy tour and performing for the troops has really brought back a lot of these memories and a lot of that sense of camaraderie, and it's reminded me that I am still part of this family. I'm out here with Air Force guys this week, Air Force Wounded Warriors, which, you know, as a Marine, I never hung out with Air Force people. We just talked smack about them, you know. Like the Marines say, "Oorah," and the Army says, "Hooah," and the Navy says, "Hoo-yah." And the Air Force says, "Hey, I can't get any Wi-Fi here. This is bullshit." You know, like we would just make jokes like that. You know, but I'm learning that we have a lot in common all across the ranks and all across the branches. And I'm happy to be a part of this family again. It's really made me proud again. It's been really good for me.
The very funny Erik Knowles, thank you, man. Very much appreciate you joining us on episode 18 of Troy Wilde Interviews. Erik Knowles, find him on Facebook and Twitter, ErikKnowles, doing a ton of great work in comedy for patrons of comedy clubs, but most importantly, wounded warriors and the brave heroes who have suffered and served for this great nation. Thank you, man. Very much, again, appreciate you joining us. On this edition of Troy Wilde Interviews, we are the broadcast quality podcast dedicated to interviewing comics all over the United States and internationally. Catch us on iTunes now, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and, of course, our website at troywilde.com. And as always, I want to thank you for downloading me. I love it when you download me. It makes me so happy to be downloaded. It's just so pleasurable being downloaded. Thanks so much. Have an awesome day, an awesome week, an awesome month, an awesome year, an awesome decade, and an awesome life.